Hello everybody and welcome again. The server has been running for a few days, so it's time to talk a bit about the thermal performance. My use case is very simple. I run a C5 pitboss server, a DNS server and Syslog storage. My experience with the Civilization 5 pitboss server is horrible, like everyone else's. There is no dedicated server as it used to be the case with Civilization 4. I'm not sure how Civilization 6 is working, but it basically runs the whole graphic engine of the game, and I need to run it under Windows 8. It's not working on Windows 10, and it's gonna eat as much CPU as you give it. Thus, well, in the past I used to work on a laptop, and the phone would kick in very often, even if I would set it to, throttle the CPU down before. So when I built the silent server, one of my goals was that it would be able to run a pitboss server for me and my friends. I initially allocated the VM 2 virtual CPU cores and 100% of the CPU time, but the temperature quickly reached mid 80 degrees Celsius, and I had to turn it off. I know that not giving enough CPU to the dedicated server causes all sorts of issues, like turns would restart and the game would sometimes just quit and it would start saving mid-game, reload. It was all a very strange experience. So I have to give the minimum amount of CPU time that will allow the server to run without any problems. And of course, keep the server within the thermal limits. I initially allocated 75% of CPU and one core, and the processor was quite cool. The temperature lowered a lot in the beginning, so I thought I could give it a bit more. So I raised the CPU time limit to 85% and run again. After Windows boots up, the temperature goes down, the CPU usage goes down, and I could run like this indefinitely without any problems. As I mentioned, once you start Civilization 5, CPU goes up, so 100% of the CPU translating to 85% of virtual CPU, and the temperature went up to the mid-60s. In that condition, I ran a full game with 12 AI playing against each other, and the temperature stayed fine. The game didn't crash even after more than 1000 turns, so I consider this a success. I had a plan of turning this server into a router and replace my Cisco, but it's a bit overkill. And if I run this as DNS server for my 5 or 10 devices, this processor is really overpowered for that. The same way for Syslog, right? I don't have storage in it to keep the energy usage low, and I just have a small 32 gig SSD to boot, and it runs fine. And as you can see here, besides the peak usage when I actually start running the application, the CPU manages to go into turbo boost for some time. The temperature stays within the recommendation, right? So more than 69 degrees would actually generate an alert on the system, and you should never go over 89, I think. And I would stay under the limit of 69 as much as possible, right? But here you can see the CPU is using 10 watts, and I imagine that the whole server is using like around 40, which is nice, maybe a bit less because there are no hard drives. My microserver is actually using 40. I should measure that one day. But with whole VM eating everything, so 20%, that is 80% of one virtual CPU. It's a dual core processor, but it has hyper-threading, so Linux is 4 processors. I can see here that in 20% usage, translate into 40% real usage of the CPU for the physical cores, you stay within thermal limits, and you could build such a server to run at your place, have it totally silent, and even run more things in it. Because, Civilization is an extreme use case and most people will not need to have this at home. I'm going to review the server more later and discuss the possibilities of such design. So thanks for watching and see you next time.